Female relational warfare, or as it's also called GSR, that being gossiping, shaming, and rallying, is how women manifest aggression, rather than war like men do. GSR is the use of social tools to lower others' reputations and secure your own higher status. It's also called drama, which for thousands of years was widely considered to be women's worst trait across cultures. However bad you imagine GSR to be, just triple it, and this is borne out in all the evidence or statistics. As an example, there's the famous study that hairdressers will purposely cut the hair of women more attractive than them a few inches shorter, but will not do so for women who are less attractive than them. My friend Homath has a brilliant video called Who's a 10, which does an analysis of this through the lens of why it's such a common phenomena that women will say all women are 10 out of 10's attractiveness, which they obviously can't believe if you watch their actions. The reason for this is that the idea that all women are beautiful, and in fact, equally so, is a convenient strategic argument for women of different levels of attractiveness. What we keep finding with the studies is that female social networks are completely dependent on agreeing to an external mask of equality, while in reality, that's just a cover for low-trust competitive strategies. Women are terrified of appearing like they're trying to do better than other women. Women try to avoid the appearance of competition with other women, while in fact they are. This is partly due to the removal of physical violence, which creates a lack of an incentive to beat people into good actions, while until recently female social status was dictated purely by beauty rather than capability like it tends to be for men. One of the things I learned from both talking to women as well as Joyce Bennison's book is that in female social structure, they're scared of being successful because in that case, their friends might no longer like them because their friends might envy them. And that's just so brutal, because what's the point of having friends if they don't support you in attaining excellence and doing cool stuff? They're not your real friends. And when this channel took out and I dropped out of college and became much more successful than my peers, it was so dispiriting that so many of them were not happy that I was successful, because I was thinking, wait, did you ever actually like me? And that's how I feel about a lot of this stuff, where I just find it completely unacceptable that women don't support other women. In female social settings, it's frequent that obvious things aren't discussed, since they create awkwardness for people trying to perpetuate low-trust strategies. As you can see, this all applies to modernity, which is very heavily feminized, with, in this instance, why modernity doesn't explain anthropology, biology, history, or how the world works honestly, since in doing so, it would show how low-trust the left is. This also involves the need of a mask for equality, fear of appearing competitive or aggressive in today's culture, while people are still jockeying for status behind it. All of this is at odds with male norms, which tend to deal with aggression or status conflicts directly, while not feeling a need for equality. This is why in historic societies, which were more masculine, they had titles of nobility, epic mythologies, or waged war for the fun of it. It's completely reasonable and rational to think that as women got more power over the course of the industrial age, that the society itself would take on the traits of toxic femininity, as the society is the end point of the people involved. The thing with GSR is when you see it, you can't unsee it. The nature of toxic femininity is all mate suppression. The underlying nature of toxic femininity is to abdicate responsibility as much as possible, while also lessening risk as much as possible. This is why historically, going back to the Greeks or Romans, the correlation between feminism and the welfare state is so strong. Women then use interpersonal relationships and communication in order to achieve said aims. The insidious thing is that women evolved to be incredibly good at this, since these were traits that were rewarded in humanity's evolutionary environment. Due to the emphasis on the abdication of responsibility, the onus for female communication is to imply as many things as possible while operating under a field of plausible deniability. This is why flirting is the way it is, existing within a range of plausible deniability and timing, in which as you flirt, you have the potential to pull back at any time due to the realization that said relationship is not worthwhile. When you look at female communication, this explains a truly vast amount of it. When you wonder why a woman does something you don't understand, try to figure out how it either balances her own emotional state or how it allows her to abdicate responsibility. For toxic masculinity, you can see it from very overt signs, that being burnt out cities and corpses littering the streets. But for toxic femininity, for this reason, it's nigh impossible to spot unless you're actively looking for it. Frequently, you'll only find it in retrospect after it's already happened. Women have literally evolved to do this and have social camouflage like a chameleon, which allows them to metaphorically hunt more easily. I'm always in shock women don't take courses or read books or any of that stuff to learn these highly complex social games. They just do it intuitively. However, the effects of toxic femininity are beyond obvious once you spot them. They can frequently completely destroy a society. Toxic femininity results in a low social trust culture. It causes environments of mutual suspicion in which everyone hides who they truly are, where nothing gets accomplished, or where normal human relationships, including procreating, have become impossible. Not treating toxic femininity as real, while acknowledging toxic masculinity, is in effect avoiding a specific type of crime, or a crime against the shared society. Most of toxic femininity boils down to greed from an individual woman, where women evolved due to the enormous costs of child rearing alongside their physical weakness, at the expense of the collective culture. The worst side of female nature is immaturity, whether pettiness, greed, envy, or weakness. To look at some examples of this from politics, the left has used GSR on an industrial transcontinental scale. The reason leftism works so well is that Marxism and its descendants create a pretty sounding ideology which, in effect, due to their complete abdication of responsibility, means that the left can rationalize literally everything for their aims. As I have said before in these two videos, leftism is toxic femininity as an evolutionary strategy containing all the trademarks, whether the removal of competition, risk, envious redistribution of resources, removal of freedom, and criticism. GSR becoming the entire society and putting pleasant fictions above reality. The thing is that literally everything in leftism is some form of mate suppression, since women have none of the incentives of group cooperation that men evolved to have. Keep in mind, men went through twice the evolutionary pressures that women did, caused by war, and the womb being so expensive versus sperm. That means that twice as many women reproduced as men did. Men are bound together as a group since they needed to fight for war, which killed 20 to 40% of men every generation in prehistoric societies consistently. Meanwhile, women's only evolutionary pressure was their own children, thus women have a cognitive bias towards greed in order to provide for their own offspring. This is why female social groups are so often toxic, and I do not envy women's social position. Female relations are based off vulnerability, in that women, especially during child rearing, are profoundly vulnerable. This is why women value sharing their emotions and attention-seeking socially, since they're testing to see if you're trustworthy with their weakness. However, since there's no loyalty or honor inside female social groups, what happens is that female social groups are constantly filled with drama, in which social relationships break apart over silly things. Throw on top of this, we've consistently found from studies that women actually benefit from causing drama evolutionarily. It's common sense that society needs to be built around stopping violence, but it doesn't go to reason in the same way that it would be true for toxic femininity. The reason for this is that the mechanism which stopped toxic femininity was called society and social norms. Women did not engage in these behaviors anywhere near the same degree 500 years ago, since women existed in intensive social webs under the responsibility of their fathers or husbands. If a woman spread lies or was a complete slut, she'd be ostracized by the village community, which had a shared moral code enforced by religion and disciplined by her guardian. In pre-modern England, and this was true across most societies, it was literally illegal for women to slander and cause drama, since it was called disturbing the king's peace. Throw on top of this laws against witchcraft, which can be pretty directly interpreted as principles against toxic femininity. What a combination of the breakdown of traditional society caused by urbanization and modernization with the internet recently is that it broke down all barriers against low-trust female behavior. In fact, we made it our religion. The worst element of female behavior, or trying to suppress the fertility of other women, became our entire culture. If you guys ever feel bad, keep in mind that the people women hate the most are other women, not men. As a comedian once said,